Ahoy! And welcome to the Boating Hour with Captain Rick. The Boating Hour brings you the latest and greatest essential information about everything that sails, floats, or motors upon the high seas of Southern California. From landlubbers to old salts, there'll be something for everyone. So climb aboard and get ready to sail with Captain Rick.
Ahoy out there and welcome to the Boating Hour. I'm Captain Rick and I want to thank you for joining us here on AM 870. We're here every Saturday at 4 p.m. and please be sure to visit us on the web at theboatinghour.com. And now on Instagram, Facebook, and Rumble. You can catch us on YouTube as well. The Boating Hour with Captain Rick. Thanks to our sponsor for our show today. For a healthy gut, the best probiotic on the market, Livia One Probiotics, natural, organic, and allergen-free. We got a few emails, but we have a wonderful guest coming up. I'm going to surprise you. Last week we talked about the Coast Guard Reserve, and there was a wonderful event on base, the employer support of the Guard and Reserve, so the ESGR. So we've got all kinds of stuff up on the website, and if you're an employer interested in hiring the reserve, boy, they're good employees. I'll talk about the event next week. But I got a surprise for you. Here at the Boating Hour with Captain Rick, we cover anything that floats, motors, and sails. I've tried to integrate rowing a little bit, and so we've got a rower on the line. So, Adrian, thanks for joining Captain Rick on the Boating Hour.
Thanks for having me.
It's pretty exciting because I got excited and found out about you, and I've got friends that pointed me to your Instagram because you rode to Hawaii. How the heck did you do that? Hawaii, what is that, 2,000 miles?
Depending on who you ask and what tracker, about 2,400 nautical miles.
My goodness. You know, I've covered Transpac, the race that starts out here in Southern California to Hawaii, and that's a big race. I call that the holy grail of race regattas. We cover a lot of race regattas out of yacht clubs and marinas, so we've covered Transpac, but rowing to Hawaii, my goodness. Okay, so I want to find out a little bit about you before we talk about, you know, your event and your teammates and going to Hawaii and rowing. You're a fitness gal, right? Is that you're a lifelong fitness enthusiast?
I wouldn't say, I guess, lifelong. I've been playing sports since I was a little girl, and then when I was just post-college, I started to get into triathlon, so in long-distance endurance, swimming, biking, running, and that led me to my now husband, and he was invited to be the coach for this 4-woman team that was going to be rowing a boat to Hawaii. Their goal was to set a world record, to break the world record for that distance of rowing from San Francisco to Honolulu. And after talking with the owner of the boat, he informed me that the team only had 3 people and they're still looking for a 4th, and I would be perfect. And so after asking some questions, like if I was going to die and did it matter that I wasn't a rower, I did some research and met the team, did all the necessary preparation in my spirit to say yes to this, and then we started our journey of preparing to go on this adventure.
So that is interesting because you didn't come as a rower. Your teammates were, what are they, collegiate national rowers? And you came on?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they introduced you to rowing. Is that right?
They did.
What was the learning curve and to train going into this event? Now you're with collegiate and national rowers. We've covered a few rowers. I've got Bobby down in Orange County that does a tournament. She got into rowing. She told a great story. She was at UCLA. She was a walk-on. She met the coach and he said, come out. She got a scholarship and now she runs one of the biggest tournaments. I've covered a paraplegic that tried to cover. She went to Hawaii and there was a tragic event, but I did a whole dedication to her. And I try to cover rowing at the yacht clubs and at the marinas. And I rowed as a youngster, but I wasn't, collegiate bound. By the way, it's a collegiate sport for NCAA for the women across the country because of Title IX, which is great. But the men, it's a club sport. But that's where collegiate athletes are usually where we get our Olympians, our national athletes and Olympians. So you were training with these people. Tell me about the training and getting introduced to rowing. So now you're a fitness person, obviously in good shape if they asked you. And your husband was what, the strength coach and the fitness coach for these girls' training?
Yeah, he's a strength and conditioning coach. His name's Jason Smith. We're both located, obviously we live together in Santa Barbara, and so one of the girls who also is local to Santa Barbara reached out to him because she said, well, if we're located here, we're not going to work with someone that's across the globe. Because
sure.
Ocean rowing is very popular in terms of popularity in the UK and that area of the world, not as popular where we live. So a lot of the teams that do the world's toughest row, that do this Great Pacific Race that we did, that do the Talisker Whiskey Challenge that goes across the Atlantic Ocean, most of them hail from Great Britain, UK, that area of the world. And so there's a lot of people who are amazingly equipped to teach people how to do this kind of a sport. And now ocean rowing, very different than flat water rowing. You don't have to feather the oars. You just get to row. And when you're doing such a long distance event, most of these events that these short water, flat water rows are, 7 minutes at the most. And ours was obviously a long time, 34 days, 14 hours and 20 minutes. So as much as we were rowing and that was the vehicle of which we were getting ourselves across the ocean, so much about it is the ability to endure and be uncomfortable and deal with learning how to adapt and fix things, or else learning how to live without them. And so that's what we started to work on. When Jason was picked to be our trainer, I might be a little biased because he's my husband, but he knows what it means to go to the pain cave, as they say in the world of sports. And sometimes if we've never had that experience, if you then put someone in an environment like on a boat where you don't get to call Amazon or, go on the internet to buy more supplies, and you have to figure out how to deal with things that you can't fix or can't, in this event, it's unsupported, so you can't ask for help. Otherwise, you're disqualified.
You mean you can't ask Domino's to deliver while you're out there?
Nope. Yeah, whatever you take with you is what you've got. And so, of course, in the event that something turns south and we needed to be rescued, then you get rescued, but you then can't complete. No one's ever touching the boat, and not that we didn't ever have anything like that happen. We didn't have that Hollywood scene of the perfect storm or deadliest catch or anything going on while we were rowing. I feel like we had the karmic journey that all of us needed. A really joyful event, and sure, it was super uncomfortable. I mean, no one wants to wake up to an alarm 6 times a day when you're only going on 90 minutes of sleep or less. But we signed up for that, and so our bodies adapted to what we needed, and we did it with a lot of joy and enthusiasm, lots of music, lots of laughing, not the best food, but, strong bodies and a mission statement to get there as fast as possible, but also to elevate each other's greatness along the way.
How did you work the food and the sleep? I'm very interested. First of all, what do you say? 34 days, 14 hours. What is that? About 800, 35 times 24. It's about 800 hours, my quick math. So you're out there 800 hours. So you're sleeping 90 minutes and then waking up and rowing, and then you've got all your food with you. You can't order out. How did you work that? How did you work the sleep-work cycle? And then how did you keep yourself hydrated and fed?
Well, great question. The fastest way that's been said to do a crossing when you have a team of 4 is to row 2 hours on, 2 hours off. So there was always 2 people on deck. There was always 2 people doing something else. If you're not sleeping, you're taking care of something, whether it's eating, making water, fixing seats, wheels, contacting land support, or making a call to your family, setting up our satellite so that we could connect to the Wi-Fi and share our pictures and videos with our social media coordinator. So, 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 24 hours a day. And how it worked would be, I had a teammate that I shared a seat with in the bow cabin, in the bow seat. And so we would rotate on the odds, and then our teammates would rotate on the even. So we would row for 1 hour with one teammate, 1 hour with the other teammate, but I never rowed with my teammate that I shared a cabin with. We would just trade-off going in and out of the cabin. And, the sleeping quarters are basically a large coffin that you can, we were fortunate enough to have the bow cabin's bigger than the stern cabin. We could stretch all the way out and not touch a wall, but not the lapse of luxury that people can enjoy at something like the Ritz-Carlton.
I get it. So it's certainly not a cruise ship accommodation. So how big was the boat? I mean, you had a little tiny coffin up front and in the stern. How big overall was the boat?
Yeah, so it's 5 feet wide, and then I have forgotten, it's like 29 feet.
Okay, so it's pretty darn small. My goodness.
29, 39? I'm having like a brain fart on that one, but something along those lines.
I get it. Wow, God, that's so interesting. So you started rowing just months before the event, and not being an experienced rower. So how did that go? I mean, you're beginning your rowing career with the idea to set how'd you do on the how did you do on the timing? Did you set the record?
Oh, we did. Yeah, we broke the record. The previous record was broken by a team of women. They broke it by 15 days. And then we broke their record by a day.
That is fantastic. So you must be having public appearances and articles written about you. How's that going? Are you getting a lot of media, a lot of exposure?
When we first got back, we did. We were on Good Morning America, Kelly Clarkson Show, Inside Edition. We were, published in Vogue and BBC. We had interviews with different news channels in Poland and China. It was kind of wild. And then, of course, just as you're familiar with, media is,
sure,
what's hot right now, it just kind of dies out. And what's really interesting is at that point in time, we didn't have any perspective other than having gone on this journey and getting back to talk about it and how we did it. And now that it's been almost exactly a year since we returned, there's been so much change and growth and transformation, not only within myself, but all of our lives and in each of my teammates. And this coming week, this Sunday, we're actually getting together for a little reunion to go and hike at the Channel Islands outside of Santa Barbara and just hang out together as a team again and celebrate what we did together.
Wow, that's amazing. I'd like to put rowing a segment at every one of my shows. I'd like to promote rowing and ocean rowing as well as competitive rowing, because it's at every marina and all the yacht clubs, of course, and the scouts. It's a great sport for the youth. It's wonderful. I see in the marinas, I'll always see a couple people. I bumped into someone that was at the UCLA, and he was a rower, and I asked him about him. Real athletic man. I thought he was about 72. The guy was in his 90s. He's coming up to his, not quite 100. I think what did he say he was, 92? And he was out there rowing, and he was athletic, and I thought he was my age. So rowing is old and young alike, but of course ocean rowing a lot different. What was your emergency plan and the exercises you did and the planning you did for any emergencies, whether it be fixing a boat or if anything went wrong with health? What was that like, training and preparing for that?
Yeah, we had to take a lot of different courses. The race rules for this required us to take a navigation course, sea survival, first aid, CPR. We had a ocean rowing coach that taught us the ins and outs of everything ocean rowing, everything from tying knots to how to slip yourself in and out of the cabin quickly, make sure that you latch all your cabin doors and compartments. And there's a lot of just simple preparations that we learned because all of us came in with zero ocean rowing experience. And so we had to learn things from scratch. So while the other girls came in with rowing experience, none of us had been on the sea before. We didn't know navigation. We didn't know, even just the degrees, to be honest, like the degrees on a compass, because we didn't have to. And, before we pushed off the dock in Sausalito to row under the Golden Gate Bridge, we had done every possible thing to prepare ourselves to have a successful crossing, except for doing the crossing. And just like you can compare this to, I have a 6-year-old, and you can compare it to parenting, where you can take the birth classes, you can prepare the nursery, you can even go to counseling and prepare your marriage for the arrival of a new person in your life. but you never really know how to do everything until you start.
Sure.
And so the adventure and the journey that we did, sure, it's not something that everybody would sign up for. And I honestly didn't even know that people rowed across oceans until the opportunity presented itself to me. But just like everything in life, there's a learning curve. And then there's also the taking of the first step towards doing what it is that you want to start setting into motion. If it's playing a guitar, you got to get a guitar, right? You got to maybe put on YouTube and learn what the chords are, how to strum, how to pick, what the notes are. Same thing with cooking, or even just installing, everybody did this during COVID. People were doing home improvement projects. They figured out how to install flooring and replace baseboards.
Right.
We're all super capable as human beings to do different things. And I think for us as a team, each one of us is very vastly different in terms of our overall, our gifts and the things that we're passionate about. But the thing that brought us all together was that we loved moving our bodies and we loved sports. And these girls were more familiar with being on a team than I was, because I was doing, prior to rowing, my sport was triathlon, and it's an individual sport. You're not working on a team. And so they taught me what it was like and what it should be like to be completely fair, how to work on a team, how to communicate, how to share, how to be honest, how to be vulnerable and share things that sometimes you're not even sharing with your partner because you don't want to seem weak or seem stressed out. And in an adventure like this, we were going to get taken to our maximum on all levels, physically, mentally, emotionally. And it was important for each of us to understand how we communicated, what our default patterns were, and what happens to us when we get stressed. And so we practiced that before we went out at sea, and how to share and how to communicate. And of all the things, that's paramount in terms of success. Marriages don't fail because someone doesn't put the toilet seat down. Marriages fail because we don't communicate
Sure.
what our needs are and what we want. And so when you get more skilled at those kinds of things, and even sharing, what's really going on at home. For me, I had a husband, a daughter, a business, and, we'd have to spend weekends waiting for the weather to be good enough for us to push off the shore and go on a little training trip. And the other girls, they had jobs or, housemates, but I was leaving behind a lot of things every single time that we went out. There's a lot of things that each of us had to orchestrate. And so sometimes my stress level was a lot higher before we would even meet to go train. And if I didn't share that with them, then I wasn't being honest about how challenging it was for me emotionally to leave my family. And at one point in time, there was a point where my teammate was really nervous about whether I was going to be able to handle being gone from my daughter for the length of time that we were possibly going to be gone. And so we had this moment where she shared with me, she's like, I'm really nervous that you're going to not be able to do it. And because while we were training, I was very fixated on spending as much time with my daughter Reese as I could. And what I shared with her, I said, I'm trying to spend as much time as I can with her now because I know I'm going to be gone for a while. And she's like, oh my God, I feel so much better because I was creating a story that you were with her all the time and you're not going to be able to leave her. And while I was actually creating my life in a way that was going to allow me to be distant from my family. And so just that simple act of communicating our worries and our fears and how we were behaving allowed us to be more honest with each other and for her to relax and trust me. And then for me to also relax and trust her that she was going to ask me and bring hard conversations to the surface. And we don't do that in life. We just go on our merry way and make up stories all over the place.
Sure, we don't address things when we need to. Well, let's talk about your business. You mentioned your business. You're up in Santa Barbara. What is your business? Is it related to the fitness industry?
It is. I run a yoga studio called Power of Your Own, and we are downtown Santa Barbara on State Street. We overlook the beautiful Santa Ynez Mountains, and we're known as the friendliest yoga studio, I would say in all of the world, but,
Okay.
we'll just say in town.
Well, I'm a klutz. I try to do yoga, but I look ridiculous. But I love yoga.
Well, it's not about what you look like. It's about the fact that you show up. Kind of like I was talking about playing the guitar, right? It's like if your body is stiff and tight, it's not going to get loose and flexible if we keep sitting and not moving.
Sure, I absolutely know that, and I try to do it as much as possible because when I'm done with the session, I feel so good. Well, let's talk about your teammates a little bit. So the teammates are all collegiate athletes. Are they now hooked on coastal rowing? Are any of them still active at the national level?
One of the girls, Brooke, she is doing coastal rowing. She's traveling around the globe to do that. And
no kidding.
Yeah, she most recently, I think the recent trip that she took was to Peru and placed second in a few different events. There's different like singles, doubles, quads for coastal rowing. And that's kind of the next up-and-coming version of rowing for the 2024 Olympics.
Right, and that's a big thing. And, of course, in 2028, the Olympics are coming here. God, that's fascinating. We're going to have to get Brooke on the show and talk about some of her adventures. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that would be wonderful because I really want to incorporate rowing, whether it be crew at the collegiate national level or the club level. I want to follow the Olympics. That's one of my goals. And, of course, rowing, you find it in the scouts, at the youth level. A lot of high schools don't have it, but our colleges do. In Marina Del Rey, we have Loyola Marymount, have the men and women's team. UCLA has a group there, and they work with all the different with scouts and with people that want to come in for lessons and stuff. God, we've barely scratched the surface. We're pretty much running out of time already because I got so many questions for you. I want to ask you about the satellite in the communication, but I'd like you to plug your websites. And you raised money for an organization, the ADAA, I guess it's the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. I looked up on the site, and I guess your big sponsor was Lincoln Financial. So let's plug a couple websites for your studio and for the sponsors and the people that made this possible.
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head there. Lincoln Financial supported us in giving us most of everything that we needed in order to make that crossing. It's not a cheap endeavor to do that, and working with ADAA, mental health is a big concern in the country and across the world, and they were an organization that we saw actually had proven research to help people in getting the resources needed to overcome issues that they're having. Myself personally, I can be found at the Adrian Smith on Instagram, and my personal coaching business that I have with wellness programs, retreats, and coaching for living your most courageously confident life is thealignedliving.com. And my studio in Santa Barbara is Power of Your Om, and that's Om as in OM, like the sound.com. And I'd love to have people visit and hit me up on any one of those options.
Well, I'd love to put something up on the website. Send me some links, and so I can definitely link and put this show up on the website and talk about you and plug the activities you're involved with. Would love to talk to you again. We barely scratched the surface, and we're already out of time. I would like you to tell your teammate Brooke I'd love to have her on the show after one of an event, either leading up to or after one of the tournaments or events that she has. So make sure you send me something I could put up on the website. That would be wonderful. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I really appreciate it. It's a wonderful story. Like I said, I got to invite you back because we barely scratched the surface, and we're already out of time. So
yeah, thank you, Rick.
Yeah. Well, that's all the time we have for you today, and I hope you enjoyed our show today. As always, we're so very fortunate to have such wonderful and exciting guests. I really love that about the show, and the people that I meet really put me through the week, and I absolutely love it. And let's not forget the Coasties, protecting our waters, America's lifesavers and guardians of the sea. Go to cgaux.org to find out about boater safety information and for volunteer opportunities in the glorious history of the Coast Guard Auxiliary. Remember, if you do it right and follow the guidelines and safety precautions, there's no place like being out on the water in the fresh air and sunshine in beautiful, sunny Southern California. Here at the Boating Hour with Captain Rick, Rick. We cover everything that sails, motors, and floats from San Diego to Santa Barbara. Thanks for being with us today, and please be sure to join us next week and every Saturday at 4 p.m. on AM 870. And don't forget to visit us on the web at theboatinghour.com and now on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. I really want to thank our guest, Adrienne. Look at the website to link into the activities and her business and the yoga studio and find out more about rowing. This is Captain Rick saying ahoy and fair winds to all.